LeBron James, the defining player of his generation, has done it once again.
See LeBron, he jumped right out of the building. He looked like Superman.
This is a bird. This is a plane.
The legend of LeBron continues.
LBJ! He nailed it! Bogey! He did it! LeBron James!
LeBron, basketball will never be the same.
There is a specific age in basketball where the countdown is supposed to start. 34, 35 at the latest. That's when the explosion leaves the legs first. Then the recovery time doubles. Then the minutes get managed. Then the farewell tour gets scheduled 2 years in advance so the league can properly say goodbye. Every legend gets that countdown. Every single one, except this one. LeBron James is about to begin his 24th NBA season, and the NBA is still, somehow, waiting for the countdown to start. The strange part isn't that LeBron is still playing. The strange part is that he still matters. By the time he turned 27, LeBron had already collected 3 MVP awards and had become the face of the league. Because this isn't a story about one shocking moment. It's a story about an entire profession, an entire industry of analysts, executives, and rival players, quietly building a prediction model around his decline for over a decade, and watching that model fail every single time they ran it. By the early 2010s, the conversation had quietly changed. People stopped asking whether LeBron would become great, and started asking how much longer greatness could possibly last. James was 27 years old, fresh off his first championship in Miami, and the conversation had already shifted from, can he win, to, how many years does he have left at this level? That question sounds strange now, but at the time it made sense. Wade's body was already breaking down in his early 30s. Nobody in modern NBA history had sustained peak-level dominance deep into their late 30s, while also playing the punishing, physical, do-everything style James played. So the assumption formed early. Enjoy this while it lasts, because it won't last forever. Nobody could have predicted just how wrong that assumption would turn out to be. Let's rewind further though, because you can't understand the doubt without understanding the pressure that created it in the first place. In 2003, an 18-year-old from Akron, Ohio, walked into the NBA with the word "chosen" tattooed across his back before he'd played a single professional game. Sports Illustrated had already put him on the cover as a high schooler. Cleveland, a city starving for a championship in any sport, treated his arrival like a religious event. That kind of expectation destroys most players. It didn't just fail to destroy James, it seemed to feed him. But even a career built on exceeding impossible expectations eventually runs into the one expectation nobody escapes. The body always wins in the end. That's the fight this entire story is actually about. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you subscribe to Scary Zone NBA. We don't just cover basketball, we tell the stories behind the game. Now let's get back to what happened next. 7 years into his Cleveland tenure, James made the decision that nearly derailed the legacy conversation before it had even properly begun. Leaving for Miami in 2010 wasn't just a roster move. It became a referendum on his character, replayed endlessly across sports television, dissected by analysts who suddenly forgot how good he actually was, because they were too busy debating how he left. That criticism did something important, though it also changed the way LeBron prepared. From his footwork to his post-game to his conditioning, he became obsessed with eliminating every weakness. It gave him a chip he never fully put down. In Miami, next to Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, James rebuilt his game from the post out, developed footwork that hadn't existed in his Cleveland years, and delivered back-to-back championships in 2012 and 2013, 2 finals MVPs, 4 straight finals trips. On paper, that's a career many players would take as their entire legacy. For James, it was still just the opening act. Then came the twist nobody in Miami wanted, and nobody in Cleveland believed was actually coming. In 2014, James went home. Not to a contender, not to a stable situation. He returned to a Cavaliers franchise that hadn't sniffed a championship in the city's history, walking back into the same fan base that had burned his jersey in the streets 4 years earlier. Almost nobody remembers how much personal risk that carried. If it failed, it would have confirmed every negative thing said about him after the decision. If it worked, it would rewrite the entire narrative. 2 years later, down 3-1 against a 73-win Golden State team, many still call the greatest regular season roster in league history, James delivered the sequence that basketball fans replay to this day. The chase-down block, the game-tying stop, the trophy that finally arrived in Cleveland, 52 years after the city's last professional title. That moment wasn't just a championship. It was the single loudest answer to every doubt raised about him up to that point. But that's only half the story, because the NBA doesn't let its stars rest on their best moment for long. The questions simply moved forward in time. If he can do this at 31, they said, this must be the peak. Whatever comes next has to be the decline. And for a moment, in his first season with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2018, it actually looked like they might be right. 55 games played, a missed playoff appearance. The quietest, most disappointing year of his post-Cleveland career. Analysts pointed to that season as proof the mileage was finally catching up. That 34 was, in fact, the wall everyone predicted. What happened next shocked almost everyone who'd written him off. The front office paired him with Anthony Davis, arguably the most versatile big man in the league, and the following season, in the middle of a global pandemic, playing months inside a sealed bubble in Orlando, with no fans, no home cooking, no normal routine, James delivered a 4th championship and a 4th Finals MVP at 35 years old. A storybook 4th ring in the twilight of a career that had already answered every major question asked of it. Instead, that's where everything changed again, because James didn't fade after that title, he adjusted. His outside shooting quietly became one of the most reliable parts of his offensive game. He restructured his shot selection with the precision of a player 20 years his junior, leaning into catch-and-shoot opportunities and cutting the wasted possessions from his game. In 2023, he passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a record many considered untouchable, to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. Kareem set that mark playing until he was 42. James didn't just eventually catch him. He broke a record everyone assumed belonged to basketball history's most patient marathoner, years ahead of anyone's realistic projection. Here's the part where the story gets uncomfortable, though, because greatness sustained this long doesn't come free. The Lakers' years that followed the 2020 title were defined as much by frustration as by brilliance. First-round exits piled up. The Lakers reached the 2023 Western Conference Finals, where they were swept by the eventual champion Denver Nuggets. Behind the scenes, tension reportedly grew between James and a front office that couldn't build a sustainable contender fast enough to match his personal timeline. A timeline that, unlike every superstar before him, simply refused to shrink on schedule. For years, LeBron had been the player every young teammate looked toward. He wasn't just carrying the Lakers anymore. He was teaching the next generation how to win. But eventually, every franchise reaches a crossroads. The Lakers knew they couldn't build around LeBron forever. They needed someone who could eventually carry the offense the way he had for 2 decades. Then, midway through last season, the entire NBA was blindsided. In one of the most shocking trades in league history, the Lakers sent Anthony Davis, the same teammate who helped LeBron deliver the 2020 championship to Dallas, in exchange for Luka Dončić. Even more surprising, James reportedly learned about the deal the same way millions of fans did, through the breaking news. For the first time in years, LeBron wasn't just mentoring another promising young player. He was sharing the floor with one of the few players in basketball capable of controlling an entire offense on his own. What could have derailed an aging superstar's final chapter, instead, became one of the most compelling on-court partnerships in recent memory. Dončić, one of the most gifted offensive engines the league has, and James, still capable of controlling entire possessions at an age when most players are 3 years into retirement, built a working chemistry that surprised even the analysts who predicted disaster. But last season also delivered the first real crack in the armor the league had been waiting over a decade to see. James's streak of 21 consecutive All-NBA selections, a record nobody else in history has come close to touching, finally snapped. Sciatica in his lower back and leg cost him the season's opening month and limited him to 60 total games. For the first time, it genuinely looked like the countdown everyone predicted had finally, quietly, begun. And then the playoffs started, and the countdown stopped again. With Dončić sidelined by a hamstring injury and Austin Reeves also banged up, Los Angeles needed someone to hold the line against a dangerous Houston Rockets team in round 1. James didn't scale back. He scaled up, increasing his workload to nearly 39 minutes a night at 41 years old, averaging better than 23 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds a game across the postseason. Numbers that actually improved on his regular season output. The Lakers closed that series out in 6 games. Oklahoma City's historically dominant defense ended the run in the second round with a 4-game sweep, but the message had already landed. This was not a player being carried by reputation. This was still one of the most impactful basketball players alive, raising his level exactly when the moment demanded it. The same instinct that produced the block and the shot back in 2016. Then came the twist. Absolutely nobody in the league office, the fan base, or even sharp insiders saw coming. This past summer, James informed the Lakers he would not be returning. Not with a farewell tour, not with a scripted goodbye. Just a phone call to team president Rob Pelinka, followed by a public statement from Governor Jeannie Buss, thanking him for 8 seasons, for the 2020 championship, for the records he broke wearing purple and gold. Dončić, the very teammate the front office had paired him with in that stunning trade, posted publicly that it had been an honor to play alongside and learn from him. James leaves the franchise ranked inside the top 10 all-time in points, assists, field goals, and three-pointers, for a team with the richest history in the sport, cracked in under a decade. Here's why that decision rewrites everything the league assumed it understood about him. The easy version of this story, the version everyone had already braced for, had James writing out a graceful final act in Los Angeles, gradually accepting a smaller role beside Dončić, letting the sunset write itself the way it did for nearly every legend before him. Instead, at 41 years old, entering his 24th season, he chose uncertainty on purpose. He became an unrestricted free agent for only the 4th time in his career, the first time since leaving Cleveland for Los Angeles back in 2018. Multiple franchises moved immediately, the Golden State Warriors reportedly among the most aggressive in pursuit, with real speculation connecting him to Miami, and even a possible homecoming to Cleveland, the city where all of this started. That is not the profile of a player being quietly pushed toward the exit. That is the profile of a player who still believes he has something worth negotiating for. Compare that to how every legend before him actually finished. Jordan's final competitive stretch came in Washington, respectable, but a clear step down from Chicago, a farewell tour more than a genuine title chase. Kobe's last seasons were marked by injury, and a Lakers roster that had nothing left to give him. Every great before James had a visible fade, a final chapter everyone could see arriving from a mile away. James is heading into year 24, still being chased by contenders trying to build championship rosters around him. Not around his name, around his actual, present tense ability to help a team win games right now. That distinction is the entire story in a single sentence. The league didn't just fail to see him decline on schedule. It watched him walk away from a storied franchise on his own terms, in search of one more chapter, because he decided the ending simply wasn't written yet. It's worth pausing on the people who made this longevity possible, because it never happened in isolation. Dwayne Wade taught him how to share a stage without losing his own identity. Kyrie Irving's shot creation in that 2016 finals run gave him the second gear that made the impossible comeback possible in the first place. Anthony Davis gave him a defensive anchor unlike anything he'd played behind before. Someone who could protect the rim, while James managed his energy for the possessions that actually mattered. And Dončić, in just a single season, proved James can still elevate a partnership with almost anyone, regardless of style, era, or the 15-year gap in age between them. Every one of those pairings tells the same story from a different angle. James doesn't just play alongside great teammates. He makes them legible to each other, turning raw talent into functioning chemistry, which is exactly why contenders are lining up for him again this summer, instead of letting him quietly fade into a farewell tour somewhere safe. Which brings us to right now, to this exact moment, with free agency still unresolved, and the entire basketball world watching to see where a 41-year-old man chooses to write his next chapter. The Warriors reportedly want him inside an audacious veteran core, alongside Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. There's real chatter about a return to Miami, back to where the villain narrative first turned into a champion's story. There's sentimental pull toward Cleveland, the city that handed an 18-year-old the weight of an entire region's hope before he'd played a single professional minute. Wherever he lands, one fact remains true, no matter how this offseason resolves. For nearly 15 years, basketball kept predicting LeBron's ending. The only problem was, LeBron never agreed with the script. So what does all of this actually mean once the noise settles? It means basketball had to invent new language just to describe him, because the old categories stopped applying years ago. It means every time the sport convinced itself it had finally located his ceiling, his ending, his ordinary human limit, he found one more gear nobody had accounted for. And it means that even now, 24 years in, with a new jersey still waiting to be revealed, this story refuses to behave the way legacies are supposed to behave. There's no scripted fade out here, no quiet final chapter handed to him by time or circumstance. There's a man who keeps choosing to write the ending himself, on his own terms, in real time, in front of a league that has been waiting for a decline that simply refuses to arrive. What do you think? Is LeBron James one of the greatest to ever do it, or is there another player you'd put above him? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because here at Scary Zone NBA, we're just getting started.